We are honored to have a special person here with us today. Jacob Hornberger, known to me as Bumper, whom I met in about 1980 at a free market seminar in Laredo. And the key to this particular seminar is that it was probably the worst attended that either of us have ever attended. And we soon disbanded and went across the border to Nuevo Laredo that evening and had a grand time. Bumper is president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which is located in Fairfax, Virginia. And he was born in Laredo, Texas. He received a BA in economics from the Virginia Tech Military Institute, Virginia Military Institute, and his law degree from UT. He was a trial lawyer here in Texas for 12 years, and he was an adjunct professor at the University of Dallas, where he taught law and economics. And in 1987, he left the practice of law and became director of programs at the Foundation for Economic Education in New York. And in 1989, he started the Future of Freedom Foundation. And since that time, he has been giving speeches and engaging in debates on all kinds of free market ideas. So let us listen to Bumper Hornberger today. Welcome to Houston.
Everywhere you look, there's a crisis. Education, crisis. Drug war, crisis. Immigration, crisis. Social Security, crisis. Healthcare, crisis. Iraq, crisis. Terrorism, crisis. Federal spending, crisis. The dollar, crisis. Crises everywhere. And yet there is a common denominator to every one of these crises. And by focusing on that common denominator, we can figure out the key to extricating our nation out of every single one of these crises and getting this nation back on the right track. But in doing that, we're much like a physician. We diagnose an illness and we prescribe a treatment. But just like when people go into the doctor's office, sometimes there's bad news involved there. Sometimes the illness is more serious than they anticipated. And when the doctor prescribes the treatment, radical surgery or radiation therapy, it's up to the patient to decide whether he wants to accept the diagnosis, accept the treatment, or continue on the same course of action, realizing that he or she's going to have to accept responsibility for the consequences. I'd like to share with you my diagnosis of the societal ills that affect America today. Before doing that, let me thank Barry Klein. It's a great honor to be here, the Houston Property Rights Association. I mean, Barry and I go back 20-something years. I don't think there's anyone in America that's more tireless, optimistic, determined in terms of freedom than Barry Klein. If you ever attempted to oppose cloning, don't, because if we could clone this guy all across America in every community, we'd restore freedom to this land. I got a lot of old friends here. Rob Bradley was on our original board of trustees at the Future of Freedom Foundation. Paige has been on our board for many, many years. Her family, we've worked together on seminars for so long. I want to thank Jeremy for helping bring this thing together and get me down here, and of course all of you that have helped the Future of Freedom Foundation over the years. I'm very, very grateful for that. Education. It would be difficult to find a better model of socialist central planning than public schooling. Amen. Or as we might call it, government schooling. Because it is, we often forget this is a government program. Whether you look at Cuba, North Korea, China, the former Soviet Union, the model of government schooling is the same as it is here. Central planning. You've got a central board, whether at a local level, the school board, or at a state level, the State Board of Education, national level, Department of Education. You've got a board of politicians and bureaucrats, perhaps the best meaning people in the world, in all these countries, planning in a top-down command and control system the educational decisions of hundreds, thousands, or millions of children. Attendance is mandated, and even those people who are in the private sector with homeschooling or private schools, they're controlled through licensure laws or monitoring. In the government schools, where most of the kids are, you've got government-mandated attendance, government textbooks, government curricula, government employees, government school teachers, everybody that's as well-meaning as possible. And yet, a disaster. I mean, disaster year after year after year. And the greatest disaster is what happens to the mindset of so many people by the time they reach 18. I mean, I don't know of any kid up to the time he's 6 years old that doesn't love to learn. There's that natural inquisitiveness. I mean, that horrible question that just drags parents down. Why? 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 By the time kids are 18, that love of learning is out of the picture. And I would suggest that to the extent that people do get educated, it's not because of government schools or attendance to these government classes. It's despite this government program. And yet we all accept the notion that this is a permanent feature of American life, and we get vested in trying to make it work. Oh, we've got to get together and reform the schools. We got to get more money in there. We got to come up with a plan to make them work. I mean, you see this most horribly in Washington, D.C., you know, where they say public schooling is necessary to help the poor. The poor pay the biggest price for this thing. The wealthy get by pretty well. The middle class get by pretty well. But everybody gets all embroiled in this crisis environment and education, and since they accept that government schooling is a given, they get embroiled in how to make it work. And yet, as we've learned from the Soviet experience, as we've learned from Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, Milton Friedman, central planning cannot work. It is inherently defective. It will never work. They've had a century to get their act together. Why are there still crises? Why are there still calls for reform? The drug war. Here you have the classic case of what economists call interventionism. Now, the mindset is a socialist mindset. It's a paternalistic mindset in the drug war. What government officials are essentially saying is, you belong to us. You're like a drone in a beehive. You exist for the greater good of society. You can't do harmful things to yourself because you're hurting society. You're hurting the beehive. You don't exist for your own sake. You don't exist for your own happiness. You can't seek happiness in your own way. You cannot ingest harmful substances because that's going to hurt everyone. You belong to us, and therefore we will punish you. We will put you in jail. We will fix you, even if you don't want to be fixed.